Tantor Audio, a division of recorded books, presents War on the Eastern Front, The German Soldier in Russia, 1941 to 1945, by James Lucas. Foreword by Robert Kershaw. Narrated by Chris Macdonnell. Foreword. James Lucas was an admirer of the fighting qualities of the German army in the Second World War, having been captured by them in Tunisia in 1942. Working for the Imperial War Museum, he had unprecedented access to contacts and German documentary wartime material, which he used to the full. War on the Eastern Front, first published in 1979, was one of the first English accounts at the German soldier level on what was then a little-known conflict. Lucas offered this invaluable small-unit perspective when there were so few definitive soldier accounts of the Russo-German War of 1941-5. Few of these early accounts, Lucas included, dealt satisfactorily with the Vernichtungskrieg, or War of Annihilation, that occurred on the Eastern Front. It was almost absent from Paul Carrell's German-translated histories of Hitler Moves East and Scorched Earth in the early 1960s. Carrell wrote about closely fought titanic battles, invariably lost on the German side because of Hitler and the lack of resources at crucial moments in the epic struggle. The Russo-German conflict was fought between two totalitarian and ideologically motivated enemies who indulged in inhuman excesses. Germany waged a genocidal war against the Jews. Recent modern wars have time again illustrated the extent to which moral responsibility becomes blurred around political edges. As one Wehrmacht veteran admitted in a TV interview, "If some people say that most Germans were innocent, I would say they were accomplices." Not all the combatants, as Lucas indicates, committed or witnessed atrocities, but an uncomfortable number did. Of the 19 to 20 million soldiers who fought for the Wehrmacht, about 17 to 19 million fought in Russia. The survivors were to populate and influence opinion in contemporary Germany today, so the subject is important. Adolf Hitler was well aware of this when he announced on the 22nd of June 1941, "The world will hold its breath," when 3 million German soldiers and their allies conducted a surprise attack on the Soviet Union. Within 4 months, the fighting power of the invasion force was irretrievably sapped. Lucas, telling the story from the German soldier's perspective, correctly identified the main factors: the Russians, climate and terrain, and the huge distances involved. The Russian Colossus was completely underestimated by the Wehrmacht planners. A short campaign of 6 weeks was envisaged. "Kick in the door," Hitler proclaimed, "and the whole rotten edifice would come crashing down." The potential Russian strength of 200 divisions had to be reassessed at 360 by German intelligence within 2 months of the invasion. Despite a maligned and shabby workers' paradise reported in propaganda newsreels, German soldiers saw instead the massive Dnieper dams and huge modern shipyards at Nikolaev on the Black Sea. They were confronted, moreover, by the technological surprise of hitherto unknown heavy tank types, the KV-1 and T-34, which outclassed any known tank and were impervious to German anti-tank guns. 88mm flak guns had to be improvised and used in a ground roll. Soviet Katyusha M13 multi-barreled rocket launchers were a particularly unpleasant surprise for the German infantry and technically unprecedented. Lucas describes how small German units had to cope with these technological shocks. Lucas correctly emphasized the peculiarities of terrain and vast distances that the German soldier found physically and psychologically difficult to comprehend. The German army was not the totally mechanized panzer force trumpeted in propaganda films like Victory in the West, shown after the successful French Blitzkrieg campaign of 1940. The Ostheer, or German army, in the East was not much unlike its Kaiserheer predecessor of the First World War. Some 750,000 horses still...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?